Welcome to the Responsible Marketing Podcast, conversations about marketing, sustainability, and how we can all help in becoming more responsible organisations. I'm Jo, a marketing strategist and consultant with a career spanning corporate, small medium business and self-employment, incorporating marketing and commercial skills in various guises, and now flying the flag for a more sustainable and kind future for all. Today, I'm joined by Miles Watkins, one of the founders of Stuff4Life and Xeroc, both incredible propositions addressing the circular economy in two of arguably the toughest industries out there. I totally geeked out about tech, legislation, and the human psychological influence on behaviours and attitudes towards responsibility and the circular economy in this episode. Plus, while it's vital to have welfare and environment at the core of a business, profit is equally as important. Miles and I discussed the barriers of going against the flow, the value chain change sandwich, extended producer responsibility policy, and where should we as consumers start in looking at whether our own efforts are carried on through. You can find the links to the TEDx talk and the books Miles references in the show notes. Let's dive straight in. Hello everyone, I'm delighted to have Miles Watkins with me this afternoon. Hi Miles, how are you doing?
I'm very well, Jo, thank you very much.
Jolly good. Miles, you have a few fingers in different pies. I'm going to put it like that. You're involved in Xeroc, but also Stuff4Life, actually, and both really interesting businesses and organisations to be involved in. Can you just tell the listeners and watchers a bit more about them and what your position is and how you got into doing those?
Yeah, absolutely. So I just about have the same number of pies as I have fingers, which is quite convenient. So we have that broadly under control.
Excellent.
My background is I'm a professional sustainabilityist. I guess I've been in that space for about 30 years. Years ago, I was probably in the early or the first generation of sustainability directors, and I held that role at Aggregate Industries, which is now Holcim UK, heavy building materials firm. In those days, you had to be a real internal terrorist to get stuff done because the stakeholder community wasn't quite in the same place as it is now in terms of being motivated around low carbon and circularity and preservation of the natural environment. It wasn't to say that people didn't care; it was just a different time, so it was really challenging. So I've worked in this space since '96. I worked in the building research establishment for a while. I was commercial director there. That was really interesting space. Did quite a bit of international work, and then since 2018, I've worked largely for myself, but often with partners, which is always much more fun and a bit less scary. Keeps you on the straight and narrow.
So you pitch each other.
Absolutely right. Fortunately, I've managed to find suitably mad people to work with. But but to your point, so we have two startup organisations. So Stuff4Life is the one that works in the textile environment, and Xeroc is the one that works in the concrete environment. So I guess taking the first one, Stuff4Life, this was really born out of a challenge that came to my business partner John Twitchen, who's done a really brilliant TEDx talk, if you want to look that up.
Right.
Whereby
I'll make a note of that one.
So someone challenged him to look at polyester recycling, and he thought, well, how hard can that be? John's a lifelong supporter of British cycling. He was ex-BMX champion when he was younger. Does a lot in that space. So he sort of came at it from a sportswear perspective and thought, well, how hard can it be? And it turns out it was very hard. We hooked up with Teesside University, and we've developed some intellectual property around the hydrolysis process to break polyester down into its constituent bits, and then we can take those bits, those monomers, those components, and put them back into the plastic supply chain without creating any unnecessary proprietary materials on the way through. And that's really important, I think, from a circular economy perspective, is to sort of nestle in the existing infrastructure. That might not give you a perfect solution, but it's an awful lot easier to get going in that respect.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's how sort of Stuff4Life was born. We focused on workwear.
Yeah.
It's because we have this absolute dislike of people. No, it's not because we dislike people. It's just in a business-to-business context. We found that transactionally that's an easier place for us to start. To compel individuals to behave differently is quite challenging. To work with them as organisations is slightly simpler.
Yeah.
organisations consume 330,000 tonnes of workwear a year, which is a lot when you think an item weighs 300 grams,
Yeah.
give or take. So if you're working with large organisations or even small ones that have got Scope 3 targets, so looking at what they're buying, or they've got circularity targets, they're well set up to look at the world differently. So the Stuff for Life offer is everything from, well, let's help you choose the right stuff in the first place. Let's keep it going as long as possible through using low impact laundry. If you decide to change the name of your business, we can help you and rebrand your garments using our proprietary logo. And at the end of life, we'll put it through the recovery process that we're looking to build this year. So we're focused on polyester.
Yeah.
Because polyester is the predominant material in workwear, generally speaking. Obviously, there's lots of other materials, and the process that we have means that we can just shred clothes, put them through the reactor, and all the non-polyester bits just essentially get left behind. So as we stand here today, they'll go to energy from waste, but over the course of time we'll develop more technology, or we'll partner with other people with adjacent technology to look at the cellulose fibres and the metals and the pigments and the other bits and pieces. We can recover, and we've got a project going at the moment with some quite big companies looking at the glass bead. So in the fluorescent bits of fluorescent jackets, normally I pick one up normally because it's beside me, but today it wouldn't be, would it?
Friday's no high vis.
The shiny bits of the high vis that they're made up of, they've got glass beads in them, which is the same as the glass beads in the markings on roads.
Okay.
But we could get those out pretty much unscathed and then get them back. So that's a really good example of how we can create a mini sort of circular economy around those materials. So that's the Stuff for Life story. Generally speaking, we're in the market. We're doing a raise at the moment for seed funding, and we're in talks with a range of investors. And so hopefully we can bring a plant to life this year. That's all been helped a little bit by the advent of extended producer responsibility policy being developed, certainly in Europe, France within Europe being really ahead of the curve, and ultimately in the UK. So even from an economic perspective, the circular economy is looking like an interesting place to go for our country, and our government has seen that. So that is helping the investment landscape around that. So that's the polyester world. And of course the technology is applicable to high street stuff and all that kind of thing as well. And then in the concrete side of things, we so as I mentioned previously, I worked in heavy building materials most of my career, and I've partnered with a couple of other guys. So a natural Guy Edwards. He used to be chief executive of agri industries in the UK and America, and a gentleman called Ian Riley who used to run the Holcim China business, which is obviously very large. And we are together developing and rolling out a concrete recycling business. Now, people might think, well, concrete's recycled all the time. Well, concrete is downcycled all of the time. So what classically happens is a construction and demolition waste is essentially processed as a mass, and often the concrete bits are really helpful because that raises the value of the really tricky, very small bits that are often containing soils and other bits and pieces.
Yeah.
And they get blended, and then they form like a fill material, which is the stuff that goes in holes in the ground in development projects. If you're reprofiling land to build a warehouse or that kind of stuff, these products that are mixed sizes, that they form a structural sort of base, the lower end of the base. So lots of that sort of thing gets used in construction. And the thing about that type of recycling is you can knock a thing down, process it on site, and chuck it back in the hole.
Okay.
So that's normal. And we thought, well, there's got a lot of value being lost there because concrete is made out of good quality, very clean aggregates and sand, and very expensive cement. Is a way of processing it differently to get it back into concrete, frankly. So we spent a couple of years looking at kit to do this, and we've worked out how to buy and use it, and we can take concrete apart into its three main constituent bits, and then make new concrete with old concrete. So instead of going down the value chain, we can do like for like recycling. Now, obviously, the rocky bits, the aggregates are, well, they've been around millions of years, so the fact they've been in concrete for 30 years doesn't make too much difference. So they're in good shape. The sand, which is the next size down, comes out really well. And then of course the old cement has
Yeah.
sort of done its job at being cement, so it can't just be cement again.
Okay.
But what it can do is it can replace some of the cement in a new concrete.
Okay.
And you can also sequester CO2 in that powder as well, up to 60 kilos a ton,
Hmm.
which is better than not doing it.
Well, exactly. Yeah.
So we got some Innovate UK money to run some trials on this with a major contractor, and we made concrete out of second-hand aggregates and second-hand sand, and we used 30% of our powder, if you like, replacing the cement in the new
Excellent.
concrete,
Yeah.
and therefore we had a 35-40% CO2 improvement. And for those people that do concrete, they know that yes, you have to take care of the materials, but ultimately it is a relatively basic product. And if you do relatively sensible things with it, that are generally footings or that type of thing, a huge volume of concrete gets used for what I would call quite unglamorous jobs. So
Yeah.
we're not setting out to build, um, size well with this material. We're setting out to help them build the enabling works for size well, because ultimately that'll all get ripped out and chucked away. So why would you want
Okay.
to do that with brand new materials when you can do it with
Yeah.
recycled
Reworked.
materials? And
Yeah.
then
Exactly.
with the customer base, we can then climb a curve of confidence to do more complex jobs. But
Mm.
there's no real need to do complicated jobs because by volume, most concrete is used in very unglamorous, quite non-technical applications because it's heavy,
Yeah. I was going to say
and
to you
and
that
dense.
you've picked two really quite considerably large industries to work on to start with, given it's a startup company. So you've got concrete, obviously, which is one of the, well, labelled as one of the worst for carbon emissions or kind of construction industry. And then also you've got, that massive volume of PPE workwear that goes through and gets thrown away and everything else. So when you say you've got two small projects, they're not that small, are they? They're quite impactful, and the impact they could have is huge if this all takes off.
Well, absolutely. I think well, so concrete, because of the cementitious bit, is generally quoted as being about 8% of global CO2 equivalent emissions.
Yeah.
But textiles is 10%. Now, you
Okay.
very rarely see a pie chart that has textiles on it to that extent, but you always see a pie chart that has got a big arrow pointing at cement and concrete going, oh, you terrible, terrible people, look
Yeah,
what you're doing.
exactly.
And I had an argument with someone literally about an hour ago about this because
Okay.
no one ever buys concrete for fun. No one ever buys
Mm.
more concrete than they need, and they definitely don't buy it at the weekend because they've got nothing better to do.
However,
Which is exactly what happens with clothes. So,
exactly.
so, so on the one hand, concrete does things like helps us with drinking water, builds hospitals. The lime
Mm.
goes into toothpaste. The white bits of peels are made out of stuff that comes out of the ground. So there are a lot of important things that happen with concrete. And yes, it does have an immediate emissions profile issue, and therefore there is a lot to do to improve it. But what it
Yeah,
isn't is a luxury material whereby society is consuming it at will.
yeah.
Whereas, like I said, on the textiles front, in the period of time in the UK, and it was over about 20 years, where the population grew by 10%, our consumption of textiles and footwear went up by 70%.
Wow.
And I don't have figures
Staggering.
for other parts of the world, but we are phenomenal in this country at chewing through garments, and of course,
It's
that's not been
incredible.
helped. Well, it's not been helped, and this is, and to be well, there's a general principle whereby things are very cheap and very cheap to throw away.
Yeah.
So as a domestic person, obviously you can now buy. I mean, you can buy a high vis vest on Amazon for about, I don't know, £1.80, which is quite scary. But you and I both know you can buy fashion items through some of the very big online fashion houses for less than a fiver.
Yeah.
And people wear this stuff once and chuck it in the bin because we don't get charged for our waste, do we? So we can throw it in the
Exactly
kitchen bin
right.
and never see it again.
Yeah.
And that is an inherent problem. And I mean, they're in Europe, and France have already done it, but in Europe they're going to make it illegal to throw away brand new unsold items. There
Oh.
is a statistic that circulated that says that for the fast end of fast fashion, 50% of all the things that are made never make it into the sales environment because the lines turn over so quickly
That it's
that the sales
redundant
started
almost.
declining before the
Yeah.
stocks ended up for sale, so they just get ditched. Um, and I
That's
think we've
crazy,
got to
isn't
look
it?
at us. Yeah, it is, and we just got to look at ourselves and go, well, these companies aren't doing this for fun. They're doing it because they're feeding a market that's
Yeah,
there.
because there's a demand
So
that's there, right?
exactly. So we got to look at each other and go, well, is there something we can do with our behaviour to try not to perpetuate this? Because you know, if you want to buy something and wear it once, buy it from a charity shop. There's loads of stuff in charity shops pretty decent.
I know.
Or if
Yeah,
you
and I
buy
was.
something, make it last a long time. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
being a bloke, of course. I've only ever bought 7 items of clothing in my entire life, and
But you wear them well, I'm sure, and
I
nothing
wear them
lasts a long
well. Yeah, so I
time.
have to wash every night, and I wear them well. Thank you. But yeah, yeah, that we have to yeah, we can point fingers at anyone else you want, but you got it's a starting with self piece, the whole textiles thing. So the whole fast fashion thing is quite problematic, which is why we've sort of focused on workwear. We understand
Yeah,
it better. I for one have bought millions and millions of pounds worth in my previous life, so it's an environment that John and I are familiar with, so that's why we started. But you are right, in both scenarios, they're big chunky items that we
yeah,
can make a little dent in, but it's worth doing because they are really important markets with really important impacts. And if we get it right, we'll have made a bit of a contribution. But it will take, in concrete and in textiles, it will take a bunch of tech and a bunch of startups
yeah.
to come
Well, I
to
was going to
market.
say, like you mentioned at the beginning, you've collaborated already, obviously with Teesside Uni, you've got your business partners. So clearly, this isn't something that's going to be by one person and you're going to change the world. As with everything else, so, it's much easier if you've got a team with you. So, I mean, are you finding there's lots of support? Have you found it tough to get supported and find partnerships? I mean, I'm guessing, did you approach Teesside Uni first and they said, absolutely, we'll jump on it and do? Or did you have to go knock on a few doors and they say, well, I'm not sure it's for us, not sure we're ready, it's too big, or I don't know?
Yeah, well, the answer is all of those things.
Okay.
So, yeah, in some cases, you generally try, and everyone will do this. You generally try and pick on the motivated because there isn't really time to spend ages and ages and ages
Yeah.
explaining to people why it's important. I think people intuitively know it is or it isn't, and you deal with the ones that think it is. It when you try and do things that are not normal, it is quite a challenge because you're asking people to step away from what they know. You're asking organisations to put their money into something that has, in theory, a different risk profile.
Yeah.
Um, we're a startup organisation, and when you go to a massive organisation and they want to work with you, they find it quite hard sometimes because
Mm,
the way that large organisations try and deal with risk in their supplier base is to set the bar quite high for suppliers. And if you're a brand new business with one and
yeah.
a half people,
Yeah.
you don't have ISO 14001, 9001, BS 6001, modern slavery statements, and all those sorts of things. Because what you try
Yeah.
to do is to get your cash flow going. Because without the cash, you can't do anything at all. And
Exactly.
and I feel when I say this out loud, as a person that used to set those standards and make it difficult for everyone, I feel a bit of a hypocrite because why shouldn't you have the right standards in your supply chain? On this end of it, it's quite hard to do all those things at the same time because if you want to get 14,001, okay, it's not terribly hard, but it's going to cost us 4 or 5 thousand quid in certification fees, which is 4 or 5 thousand quid. I don't have to do it, so I then have to take a critical view about who I can and cannot work with,
Yeah.
or or you do what we've done, which is we partner with Arco.
Okay.
So Arco is one of the most successful independent providers of workwear in the UK. Fantastic family-owned business.
Mm.
They helped us because they did pre-seed money with us to help prove the technology, but we can piggyback with them. So we're helping them find better whole life and end of life management for their customers, and their customers can pay us through Arco.
Okay.
So rather than setting us up as so our customer is Arco, and then Arco has its customers, and that
Yes.
just helps provide confidence and makes it a bit easier because
Yeah.
sometimes setting yourself up as a supplier with a big firm can take months and months and months and
Oh,
months of
absolutely. And
money.
and you're right on the accreditation thing. And sometimes, I mean, you probably have got the stepping stones in place to actually get that accreditation. But like you say, it's the financial outlay sometimes, isn't it? And quite often I'm there. In fact, there's a few businesses I've come up across recently, and they've talked about having these kind of like processes and whatever in place to the point of being able to apply for an accreditation, but actually they don't want to do the accreditation because they don't need to see the necessity. Sorry, the necessity. Oh, I can't say necessity. So they can't see the necessity of actually paying out to get the accreditation, which is just a badge, when actually they can prove their processes are there, providing their supply chain or their customer, for example, will actually look at that documentation rather than just seeing the badge, if you like.
Yeah, I mean, I think I got some sympathy with that. I mean, historically, I did lots of this sort of stuff. Again, I worked in a big business. Back in the day, we put hundreds of sites through ISO 14001
Yeah.
in 1999. So I've done the board treading on that. With my consulting hat on, because I do a bit of that just so I can eat. I do quite a lot of work with the PAS 2080 standard, which is becoming more popular in construction around collaborative working to reduce whole life carbon. So I think these things are quite important. I just think so it'd be remiss of me to say they're not important. They are.
Yeah.
It's just hard when you're. I mean, I like anything that raises the bar in terms of quality in the broadest sense. Anything that drives transparency is good.
Yeah.
Third-party verification or certification, having someone else's eyes come look at what you're doing, I think is really high value. It's just very hard to do when you're starting out, because you don't have the liquidity or frankly the time to do that. It doesn't mean it's not important. It's just one of those horrible things that you have to decide on when you get up in the morning. Do I spend all day writing a manual for this, or do I go and chase some customers?
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm sure there'll be people in the comments going, "You need to do both. You need to do both, and you need to get your act together, and you need to get some out."
Well,
Absolutely,
yeah.
I'm completely aware of this.
There's only 7 hours a day.
I get, I quite routinely look at myself and go, "Oh, that wasn't the right decision, was it?" So, and I have, and that's it's when you
it's human.
working in a small business.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly a small business, and I'm sure people listening and watching will resonate with that completely if they're running small, medium businesses, because quite often, even if you have a team, you're still wearing lots of hats, even within those teams. So, and decision makers and making decisions between you as a team and collaborating, all that kind of stuff. So, your passion for not social value, social value and circularity and extending life and responsibility, I guess that's clearly obviously been with you for many years. Like, how did you what was the prompt to get you into that in the first place?
Well, I did a degree in environmental studies at what was Hatfield Poly, and then I applied to Hatfield Poly and I arrived at University of Hertfordshire. So
congratulations.
A number of people listening will know what I mean, and a lot of people listening will have a clue. And just to help them, there was a period where there were things called polytechnics, and then over one summer, lots of them became universities. So that's what happened then. That was in '92. So so I did study the state of the world in quite some detail. And that really came back because I wasn't quite sure what to do, and it looked quite interesting. And then, of course, that's a massive eye opener, because I think when you actually sit down and look at the impact that we as humans have had on the planet over a very, very short period of time, it's quite terrifying, really. And when you look at and it's really from the '70s. So I was born in the early '70s, and you look so almost literally in the time I've been alive, we've made the biggest mess. And you can't sort of unsee that. Now, am I a raging tree hugger environmentalist? No, I'm in some cases I'm absolutely useless. But am I completely aware of the challenges, and am I interested in going after the really big ones? Yes, I am. And I think we only have a limited number of hours as a human, and if I can go after the biggest gain I can with my hour, I think that's what I'd quite like to do. And if I can find a way to create a decent network whereby there's a multiplier effect, that's what I'd like to do. But I'm not doing it in a way that is without good business sense or a decent economic underpinning, because going back to a very old-fashioned definition of sustainability, it's supposed to be the comings together of the social, the economic, and the environmental. So if you take the economic out, it's not very sustainable literally by definition. And in practical reality, I mean, there's been endless organisations that are well-meaning, and the product or the service just isn't there. And they collapse, and then the good that they try to do stops. So harnessing the power of the economy to deliver these benefits it's not just good; it's essential. It's absolutely essential. So we've got to, with both Xeroc and Stuff4Life, the inputs and outputs are all market priced. I mean, we'd love a green premium if you can get one. in the same way as people would like to get a service premium or what have you. And you'll always look for that. But your business plan has got to be built in the context of the market has a price. So our white powder that comes out the back of processing clothes is a commodity. Terephthalic acid is a commodity. So we price that based on what it's priced, you know, and the incoming stuff is, well, what's the going rate for premium laundry and repair services? It is what it is. Well, that's what it is then. And obviously you try and do the best you can and look after people the best you can to keep them up the pricing in the right place. But if we don't have a decent business case, we don't have a business.
No,
and then we aren't going to be any good, and there is no social value. So I've always, and having worked in sustainability, you know, for a long time, particularly in the early days, as I explained 20 minutes ago, it was even more fundamental at that point, because it was really difficult to appeal to people's better nature. I mean, now you'll see routinely chief executives of organisations standing on stages addressing crowds of people around the carbon challenges in their business and the circularity challenges at length without any notes. And if I could get back in the day someone to talk about this stuff for 5 minutes off a teleprompter, I'd be doing pretty well. And it wasn't because they didn't want to do it; they just weren't confident in the subject. It wasn't really part of the narrative. And now, you know, I hang around with business leaders who are just so on their game on this. It doesn't mean they've solved it, and it doesn't mean they know all the answers, and it doesn't mean they don't have difficult decisions to make whereby they can't do the right thing. But my word, the level of competence is just in a different place, and that's how these solutions are going to get delivered. They've got to be situated in a good economic context.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think there's also some fear around that as well. So, I mean, even when I started really seriously looking at sustainability a few years ago, you know, there was that whole, I went through this mindset of, you know, money's a bit dirty. You know, it's bad to talk about profit because you don't want to be saying to people, this is a really good way, like embracing sustainability is a really good way to make more money for your business. It's not, that's kind of like almost the wrong argument for it. But actually, like, you're quite right. There's 3 pillars to this. And you've got to have money to run a company and keep it going and feed your employees and them to feed their families and all that kind of stuff. So it's got to be part of your consideration in that. And the fact that, like you say, the conversation is now becoming more natural is amazing. But I do think there's still a fear for people. Either they think it's expensive to do, or they think it's too much work, or actually the benefits aren't really there. And it's that kind of education piece I still think that needs to happen. So, you know, projects like yourselves, like Stuff4Life and Xeroc, those are the ones that are really going to show kind of maybe bigger businesses, that's what needs to happen, but also smaller businesses, you can have a space in this industry, this newer industry that's emerging as well.
And it's a lot easier to birth yourself as a sustainable business than it is to be an inherently unsustainable one. And I don't mean that in the sense of being mean, but if your business has grown up in around, you know, primary materials and that sort of stuff, to suddenly turn 90 degrees to what you're doing is really, really hard. I mean, so to set out on a sustainable business pathway from scratch, I mean, setting out in business is difficult. I mean, you know that, I know that, those of us that are listening that are running their own businesses know it is brutally difficult. And if you want to do something in a sustainability niche, it's brutally difficult plus one. Because it is, but it has to do the things that you just said. These things we have to run proper businesses. I mean, taking a philanthropic approach or a non-profitable approach, I just think it's just really, really hard. And also, I think it's doing a bit of a disservice, really, because it also devalues the principle of trying to look after the environment and people. It's saying, well, it's a bit of a charity thing. Well, no, it's not a charity thing. It's a core thing. You know, we have an economy, and one of the products of that economy needs to be great welfare and a really good quality physical environment. So yeah, I've quite strong views about this, and I know there's lots of people that, are massive advocates of only being a social enterprise and not making any money and this kind of stuff, but you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with. I don't think profit is a dirty word. I think it's a really necessary word.
Yeah, well, I've completely changed my tack on that, and I'm like, you've got to talk about profit. And even if you are a social enterprise or a charity, you still have to make profit. You still have to pay your people, and you know, honor that kind of like third leg, if you like, of you know, enhancing your workforce, making sure they have great environments at work, but also they go home happy and they want to come back to work, all that kind of stuff. And just on the circularity of products that we've touched on, so that's, I think, as a consumer, that's not an easy thing to find out necessarily. So you kind of know if you buy something and you either, I don't know, share it somewhere else, so you give it to, donate it to somebody or donate it to a charity shop or whatever, that's great, because you kind of know someone hopefully will come and buy it. We don't really know that, but hopefully that's what's going to happen. But even things like, and I have had this wrangle with my local council, where they sent me a survey saying, what do you know about our recycling service, and blah blah, and do you know this, and do you know that? And I said, no, I don't know where anything goes. As far as I know, you do come and pick my recycling up, and I do, make sure it's all separated, everything else as you wish. I have no idea what happens to it afterwards. Like, it might all go to a massive bonfire and I have no idea. I've got no evidence to say where it goes. So where do we even start kind of looking at that, like, as even from a consumer, like an individual point of view?
Oh, that's interesting.
Sorry.
No, but it is interesting. I think the information available, the information available around where stuff comes from and where it goes to is evolving, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
let's face it.
Yeah.
I have absolutely no idea where my household bits go. I go to the recycling centre. I think ours is run by Veolia, so it's a
Okay.
private company. That's quite common. Nice big notice board on the outside that gives us by percentage down to the individual numbers. So
Yeah.
60 or 62% of what is recycled. Where, not a clue, no idea whatsoever. So I think we all sort of live in that space. And what actually happens to the stuff that gets collected in our multitude of bins, I'm not sure about that either. And I think, and the same. I mean, the waste industry. There's some great people in the waste sector, and we work quite closely with quite a lot of them. But I think it's coming from a place where no one asked any questions to a place where everyone's asking questions, and their own systems and processes and ability to disclose is now trying to catch up with the need for the information. And so for example, it's quite routine for a recycler at the end of a year to tell you how much of what went where, but it's the active reporting of what is going where is the challenge. And we find this in with Stuff4Life with textiles. We look at people working in the textile recycling space or trying to recycle. It's quite hard.
Yeah.
And normally it's retrospective sort of view of the year that says, well, 20% went there and 10 went there and 4 went there. But if you send a thing to them, it's very hard to work out where your thing goes. They just look at it on a sort of an annualized basis.
Very
And I
top
think,
level.
yeah, and I think at an individual level and at a company level, there's an increasing intolerance to that answer, really. And it's because I think a lot of us see the press of wastes and rubbish and bits and pieces ending up in deserts and on beaches and exported and all this sort of thing, and you think, well, it can't be that hard to work out where this stuff goes. How come nobody knows? So I think there is a real challenge. And then if you go sort of the other end, which is the incoming end, the stuff that you're buying, I think that's a bit of a journey as well, because you can clearly see there's effort going in to try and better explain the origins of things and whether the content is recycled or can be recycled, and if so, how. And we've ended up in a place where it's just all really confusing. And half the time you look at a thing and it says this can be recycled. And do they mean the packaging or do they mean the stuff in the packaging?
Yeah.
And all this sort of caper. And the problem with all of that is, there's opportunity to be taken by those that are just not quite in the right space in terms of honesty. So you can stretch the boundaries of the truth in different directions, and that just catches people out. And there's clearly there's a massive government campaign to try and deal with greenwashing. So the Competition and Markets Authority is starting to get quite aggressive about that, and that's a mixed
quite
bag.
Rightly as well, I think. Yeah.
No, absolutely, it is quite
like that, doesn't it?
No, absolutely. And I routinely look at it's quite funny. I quite routinely go through the Green Claims Code and remind myself what it's all about. And if you're not, so if you do this stuff for a living, it's it's relatively easy to spot, and you can see what you can and can't say, and you understand why. If you're not in this space and you just want to try and say something about the stuff that you're selling in a relatively innocent way, it's quite easy to fall down a hole. I mean, I work at businesses that constantly trot out things like environmentally friendly and oh god, so there's a bunch of phrases that people use.
Yeah,
Which
I was talking to somebody that had funny enough, they're in the workwear space, and they had a product that they called the green. I won't say what it is because it might be obvious who it is, but the green piece of workwear. And I said, well, why are you saying it's green? I mean, it's not coloured green, for example. Why are you saying it's green? Oh, well, it's got, I think it had somewhere on average, it had so many grams of recycled polyester. And I said, okay, so you've got like a number somewhere between this number and that number. So why don't you know how much is actually recycled polyester? And actually, does that make it a green product? Because it's very small. So it doesn't really make it a green product. You know, you really kind of like stretching that to the point of, and people probably won't question it straight off necessarily, but you will eventually get someone who says, well, how much is in there? Or one of your competitors calls you out, or whatever it is. And then you're like, oh, okay, if you haven't got the evidence and you can't justify the claim, then you're in the sticky stuff, aren't you?
No, you absolutely are, and it's quite hazardous because on the one hand, you want to encourage, back to what we're saying, you want to encourage businesses to reduce the impact of what they're doing to people in the environment, and there needs to be encouragement and support, and positive feedback to those that are giving it a go. So, is it better to have recycled content in a thing than not? Well, normally it is. You know,
Yeah,
is it
definitely.
better to go a shorter journey than a long one? Probably. Is it better to create a thing that's really easy to recycle as opposed to not? Yes, it is. And then how you describe that, as we just discussed, is really quite important. But if we put everyone off by making it really difficult, I worry that they'll stop doing it. And there's we've got a next week, I think it is, or week after, we've got a webinar on this. You can look on our Stuff4Life website and sign up on greenwashing. Unfortunately, my business partner John has to do it on his own because I'll be in Yorkshire on holiday.
Oh, bless you! You're going to Yorkshire on holiday. I'm a Yorkshire
of course,
girl.
Yeah. Oh yeah, well, I'm going to Yorkshire
Get really
because
treated.
I'm married to a Yorkshire woman, so it's a mandate to go to Yorkshire.
I like it.
But
And you're
I
like
very
for a
much.
reason.
It's also incredibly low carbon because it's only 2 hours away. So
Very true.
but anyway, so I noticed that Europe is looking to amend its greenwashing regulation because I think it's sort of come to the conclusion where it's the bar is set in such a place it's almost a discouragement of smaller businesses to give it a go, and there's no easy answer. I think the mission is to stop people taking consumers, either professional or domestic consumers, for a ride, right? I mean that's what we're looking at here. I think is obfuscating facts and taking advantage of a market gain by frankly lying is the bit we're trying to deal with.
Yeah.
Not make it really hard for someone to genuinely put a thing on the market which they hoped was better than the one that was there before, as we discussed. More recycled content, less recycled content, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is a difficult space, but the UK government in particular is absolutely clamping down on this in a massive way, and there's been some point.
I'm glad about that. And will that include looking into? I mean, I know obviously not every size of business is reporting now, but do you think it's going to go into kind of businesses that make a claim about maybe one part of their business and almost not quite ignoring, but they're shouting about one particular part of their business, for example, that they're really good, I don't know, maybe on the community space, or one particular strain of products is really, really great for the environment, or whatever that is. And yet, on the other side of the fence, if you like, or around the other side of the door in the same organization, there's something else going on that really is quite detrimental. So is that going to become a thing as well, where actually organisations are going to be looked into with a bit more depth to see where they stand on that? Again, I don't want it to be a barrier to people starting to do stuff, but they need to be open about, yes, okay, we're brilliant at this, we're not so great at this, so let's just approach both of those and be really transparent and clear about it, and show that we're going to go on this journey, and this bit will come later.
I think for the larger organisations, this stuff gets dealt with in the corporate reporting piece, because if you took a large company and they had a range of products that were, let's just call it, more sustainable, Yet there wasn't any narrative about the rest of their organisation. I think that is a bit of a worry, because I don't, even if it wasn't greenwashing, what it is obfuscating something somewhere else. But equally, is it better that business has a go at transforming than not? Well, it's definitely better. And I always say, never bet the farm, right?
Okay.
So, you know, you as a big company that does whatever it does, if you're trying to move forward on the sustainability agenda, you got to start somewhere, and you start and off you go. And so on that basis, you're generally going to start small, because you're going to try some things and try and de-risk what you're doing, whether you're, you know, introducing new content into a product, or switching supplier, or doing whatever it is that you're doing. You know, it's very hard to boil the ocean. It's just not good risk management practice. So regardless of what you do, doing better is always, I think, is always a good thing. And you're right, sometimes the optics, I mean, as you were speaking, I was trying to think of examples that I could use without being massively revealing, or probably wake up the horse's head in my bed. But and it's not to speak, you know, it's not to speak ill of anyone, but you know, we are surrounded by very large companies and industries which have given us the earth and the lifestyle that we have, and we are consuming the products of all of them, right?
Yeah.
So it is absolutely the case that some of those large organisations do have lines of products and services which are, in theory, more sustainable. This happens every single day of the week, and they do have massive other things that are probably less sustainable. I mean, years ago, when I was at Aggregate Industries, we launched something called the Life range of products, and I think it's still going, interestingly.
Oh, okay.
And when we set it out, we said, right, what we'll do is we'll create a catalogue of products where, to get in the catalogue, you've got to have, and I can't remember the precision of this, but it was something like, you've got to have 50% recycled content in the product. It's got to be 30% lower embodied carbon than the market norms. And another factor as well we threw in that I honestly can't remember now because I'm getting old. And then we had a lot of debate about this at the executive team, because they were like, well, if you do that, what is it saying about our other products? And we were like, you know, it's like, well, yeah, what it's going to say is we've got a lot of unsustainable products.
Yeah.
But are we then saying we shouldn't do it at all? Because that doesn't make any sense, because we've got to move things forward. And over the course of time, you would hope that there would only be the Life brochure, because there wouldn't be anything that isn't in it. But what we've got to do is to put something in it, and then some more in it, and then some more in it, and then we'll move in that particular direction. So this stuff's really difficult. I mean, and the other thing that makes it frustratingly hard, if you do this sort of thing for a living, is if you are trying to get better, you can only buy constituent materials and components that are for sale, right? So you can't buy magic sustainable things that don't exist, that you then combine with other things to make a better product, right? So things need to exist in order to incorporate in other things to make another thing, right? So instantaneous transformation to sustainable products is very hard. And then even if you did that, you then find that people buying them don't want them because they really, really liked the other one that you used to have.
Yeah.
Because by virtue of being a bit more sustainable, you've changed a particular element and they don't like it anymore.
Yeah.
And I give a classic example that happens in heavy building materials is in the asphalt space, where there's been a lot of work gone into basically making asphalt cooler, right? So asphalt being the black stuff that goes on roads. Invariably, it's a product served hot. So obviously you serve it less hot, less heat, less carbon. In short, basically.
Okay.
But quite a lot of those companies that apply this stuff to roads and road repairs and that kind of thing like it hot, because they find, factually or not, excuse me, that it's more workable, and you know, they just feel they can work with it better in the field.
Okay.
So here you've got almost the whole of the asphalt supply industry, which of course is full of very large companies, going, no, we're all going to unilaterally just try and knock the temperature down on all these products. And then you've got the actual customers going, no, don't do that, because I don't want them anymore.
Well, yeah, and I guess then you've got more people on the road for longer, so they're paying for longer hours maybe, or out of hour work.
Yeah, no, there's all that, but they just literally, on a very basic level, they just can't be bothered, because it's just a bit harder. So the arguments aren't even that sophisticated. So, and again, what I'm trying to do is, I'm not trying to do in the people buying these products. I'm just pointing out the fact that as a company, you can't
Yeah.
buy magical things that don't exist to make your stuff
Yeah.
cleaner and greener, and you can't immediately sell fantastically sustainable products to people because they because if you change anything about what's going on, some people struggle to buy it because they're trying to do what they
Yeah.
did yesterday. So it's when you're in a sandwich in a value chain, which pretty much every
Yeah.
organisation is, you can only move as fast as the people one side of you and the other.
Yeah.
Broadly, you can influence, you can squeeze, you can try and change the rules, you can do all sorts of things, but you can't buy stuff that doesn't exist, and you can't sell stuff that people don't want.
Yeah.
Because then we're back to that problem we talked about a little while ago, which is you run out of money, and if you run out of money, you do no environmental or sustainable good whatsoever.
Yeah.
You're doing nothing.
I guess
So,
it comes
so
down to communication a lot of it, doesn't it? Communication and collaboration. We're back to that, really, aren't we? Where,
yeah,
if you're communicating kind of the good that you're doing and explaining that, yes, okay, this is a really good part of the business, but maybe there's some to catch up. Okay, that's fine. You're being honest and transparent about that. Equally, if you're communicating with your value chain, saying we actually want to do this, what do you think? Let's do some test trials, blah, blah, blah. Let's come to some common ground at some point or common points between those two posts, then that will help develop it. But like you say, you can't do it without just on your own and just go out kind of, without regard for anything else and just do it.
no, yeah, you can do a bit, but if you want to make a big change, you have to work on it collaboratively,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
that goes back to the what suppliers can I work with to make a difference? What customer segment can I work with to make a difference? Who can I work with internally? Who can I work with from an external stakeholder perspective to try and get a bit of a flash mob, of course, an old word, together to try and get some momentum. That's all you can really do, because if you try and do it in splendid isolation, you're really going to struggle. And like I said, it's easier to birth yourself into a if you like, into a sustainable business, but easier, but not that easy. I mean, if anyone watches Clarkson's Farm, I mean, this is an absolutely brilliant exercise in this. So he's just opened his. This spoiler alert for those who haven't watched it yet, but he opens his boozer,
Okay.
opens his pub, and he tries to run it on things that are sourced within a really small radius, and then realise it's absolutely impossible to run it on the source of the local radius, because people run out of things, and because they run out of things, you can't plan the menu. If you can't plan the menu, that makes it really difficult to actually operate the pub, and then you can't buy ketchup. You want to have UK only stuff, and there's those things we don't make. We don't make pepper. We don't make ketchup. We don't make loads of stuff. So it's really difficult. So there's a human that said, right, I am going to enter the market with essentially a local / national provision.
How hard can it be?
How hard can it be? We make loads of stuff. Oh, very hard. Back to that thing again. Yeah. Very hard. So intention, noble intention. Bloke's got tons of money. The wind could not be blowing more in his direction.
Yeah.
Still couldn't manage to pull it off with all the. There wouldn't be a human being that had as many levers as they could pull to make that work, and he still couldn't make it work. So because you're you're only as good as the people behind you in your supply chain, and you can only sell what you can only sell what people want to buy, right? So
so
I thought that was quite an interesting example of
that is a really good example. I love that example, actually. I don't actually watch Clarkson's Farm, but a lot of people have said to me, you really should do. And well, not spoiler alert, I just don't really like him, actually, as a person. So that's
not that this podcast is around that, but I also urge you to watch it, because it will reform your view, and it's probably done more for. I'm not just nicking other people's quotes, but it's done more for farming in probably a handful of seasons on Amazon than any farming program anywhere ever.
Wow.
It's definitely worth. It's definitely
I need
worth
to doff my cap to it and have a look. Okay, I promise. I'll let you know what I think. I'll message you and let you know.
Do it for Britain.
Yeah, exactly. I'll suck it up for Britain. Yeah, it's fine. So just on the education piece then, because you talk a lot about education and sharing knowledge, and obviously you're doing your startup businesses to help and collaborate and really educate those industries and what can be done. Where do you think is a good place to start for any SME? Where's the basics going to come from, do you think?
Well, I think probably the step one, I think, is to understand a bit more about the state the world is in. So I'm quite a big advocate of being carbon literate.
Yeah.
So there is a thing called the Carbon Literacy Program. We do some training on it, which is a really cool thing. But lots of others do as well, and it's quite good. I mean, it's 8 hours of learning about, frankly, how we've managed to ruin the planet, and then some hours within there about how we're going to try and move it forward. Because at least it gives you a factual basis of the challenges and the root causes of the symptomatic issues around climate and all the interlinked nightmares that have gone along. So I think, like anything in life, I mean, getting a foundation of understanding of the concepts of climate, carbon, and broader concepts of sustainability, I think, is a really important place to go. And then, of course, it's about situating your life, if you want, but certainly your business in that, and going, well, what do I control and influence here?
Yeah.
Which is basically coffee and biro work. You don't need to make that very complicated. And go, well, what's the fat end of the stick? What is it in my business that's got the big impact? And what do I, what can I do about it? What will it cost? What would the benefits be? Because it may give you access to different markets. It may open up different customer segments. It may
or even funding, like you said about Innovate UK. I know they're very popular for funding, specialist projects at the moment, aren't they?
Yeah, no, Innovate UK is a great source of funding if you're actually able to get any. It's very popular. It's very hard to apply for.
Okay.
I can quite happily do training on how not to win Innovate UK money.
You've had a few goes then.
Extremely successful at getting rejected by Innovate UK. So I can definitely talk at length about that. But yes, there are, in all seriousness, there are absolutely sources of funding. And for small business, excuse me, there are lots of pots of money controlled by district councils to help small businesses access to consulting, particularly around carbon. So the rural, blimey, I can't remember the name of it, but if you look at your district council's website, it will tell you. But there's through levelling up and those sorts of processes, there's money available for that type of stuff. There's routinely productivity, and I'm looking at an example. I'm working on in my spare time on the rebuilding of something called the National Stone Centre in Wirksworth in Derbyshire. We're going to build a zero carbon building. We're going to do lots of education around minerals and the future of minerals and that kind of thing. So that's in Derbyshire Dales. Derbyshire Dales has got a system of grants whereby you can get up to half your money back on capital projects to improve productivity, to improve employment, and to reduce carbon. So there are.
We have something similar up here.
And they will be everywhere. And I encourage anyone that's got a small business. I mean, the laundry we work with Stuff4Life that's out in Bridgnorth, the lady that runs that has bought a lot of equipment to grow her capacity, and again that's been supported. So she's bought some low impact, highly efficient kit, and that's been supported by her local authority. So I really encourage small businesses to do that. And that's much more, and I'm not trying to do in Innovate UK, but that is a lot more accessible than the UK research and innovation money, just by virtue of the fact that it's regionally dispersed. It's designed for small business, and you're not competing with 20 million other people for the money. But that's a really good place to go. And normally in those scenarios, they have retained consultants to help with decarbonising business in particular. And of course, carbon's one issue of many in the world.
But it's a start, right? So that's what we're trying to do. It's a start.
It's a good proxy for other things.
Exactly. It's somewhere to start, and it's probably the most easily measured or monitored option that we've got at the moment. So
I definitely encourage people to try and start at the fat end of the stick. So just have a look at your organisation. Look at what you're buying from the energy perspective. Look at the stuff and where you're selling and where it's coming from, and just try and understand where the big numbers are, and try and think about the big numbers, because the little bits do matter, but they don't matter as much as making a big dent in a big thing. So I'd always encourage people to to go for the fat end of the stick. I think
I like that expression, fat end of the stick.
We got actions speak louder than words. Don't boil the ocean. Don't eat the elephant in one go. Fat end of the stick. Yeah, we're full of really unscientific comments.
Miles, it's been absolutely fabulous to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for your time. Just one last question, which is a bit of a one just to throw in. Do you have a book recommendation or a favourite book? It doesn't have to be business. It could be in your own personal reading space or Audible, that you'd recommend people to have a look at, either to do with sustainability or something else?
That's an interesting. I mean, I haven't. I don't do a lot of reading, but I tell you what, I do have a book that I really that I remember because I used it a lot in my PhD, which was essentially a Michael Porter book about business strategy. So he back in the day, at least, he was a really prolific author around business strategy, and he writes in a way that normal humans can read it. So if you're interested
Ah,
in how do I make my business work, type stuff,
yeah.
that's yeah, the Michael Porter stuff is always worth a read. And then in the same space, if you've got a job in a big company and you just spend all day with your head in your hands going, I don't understand how this works. There's I think it's Charles Handy wrote a book called Understanding Organizations, which is
Okay.
really fascinating because
Yes,
you'd
I
think
think I.
how hard can organizations be, because you get paid to do a job, should be easy. So yeah, Understanding Organizations by Charles Handy. It must be 30 odd years old, that book,
I'm going to
but
say, I think that came up in my economics or something to do with my
it would have done.
degree or
It would have been a
something, I think.
standard MBA text and things back in
Yeah,
the day.
I'm pretty sure I've
So,
had a look at that in the
but
past.
I'll chuck one more at there because you've
Yeah.
asked me the question. Because it's funny because I don't do a lot of reading apart from on holiday when I read trash novels like everybody. But the other one, if you like the British countryside, Christopher Rackham, History of the Countryside, which is quite a thick book, but
Christopher
it goes
Rackham,
into
not
Christopher
Christopher
Rackham. Yeah,
Rackham.
brilliant book. It tells you all about if you it helps you spot different landforms in the countryside, like drovers'
Oh,
roads and old ploughing systems. It goes through English place names and how they came to be, and all this stuff. It's
so
absolutely
your
fascinating.
2 hour
And
trip to Yorkshire will be fascinating for your
you'll need quite a
party
few of
because you'll be
those.
telling
And I
her
lent
all
my
sorts.
I lent my example of it to someone, and what's really annoying is I cannot remember who it is. So if you are out there and listening and you've got my Christopher Rackham, can you send it back to me, please?
Yeah, there you go. You've heard it here first. Miles, it's been fabulous. Thank you so much again for your time. I really appreciate it. I'm sure it will have been useful for everyone to hear that. And also for your book recommendations, I will make sure that they go in the show notes as well. But thank you also to our listeners and our watchers, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Joe.
Pleasure.
You've been listening to the Responsible Marketing Podcast. You can contact me with any questions or comments by email at joe@jolonconsulting.com or find me on LinkedIn. All recordings of the podcast can be found on the usual podcast channels, as well as on YouTube if you prefer to watch rather than just listen. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit subscribe, which helps the podcast to be found by more people. And of course, feel free to share it on your socials, with your friends and your colleagues. That's it for now, so until next time, thanks for listening.